1 kilogram of raw cashew nuts. A knife, a scale, and about 40 minutes of patient work. At the end of it you get a single number, and that number decides what an entire container is worth. This is the cut test. Kernel Outturn ratio. KOR Outturn, 3 names for 1 measurement. How many pounds of usable kernel you can expect from an 80 kilogram bag of raw nuts. Not what the bag weighs, how much of it you can actually sell. Here is the first trap, and almost nobody warns you about it. KOR means 2 different things. The cut test gives pounds per 80 kilos, a laboratory estimate. Factory recovery is what actually comes off your peeling line, as a percentage of raw nut weight. 48 pounds is 27.2% on paper. Real recovery is around 23. The gap is drying and peeling loss. You need very little, a balance accurate to half a gram, a catheter bag sampler, shelling scissors, a scooper, 4 bowls in different colours, buckets for the samples and gloves, because cashew shell liquid burns skin. Sampling is where most bad tests are born. Take 1 bag in 10 for a large lot, 1 in 5 for a small one, and push the sampler deep. A supplier hiding poor bags will hide them in the middle. Everything you draw is tipped onto a clean floor. That pile is the mother sample. Mix the pile until it is genuinely uniform, then split it into 4 quarters. Sample 1 is quarter 1 plus quarter 3. Sample 2 is quarter 2 plus quarter 4, always opposite quarters. It is the cheapest insurance against a badly mixed pile that exists. Weigh each sample to about 1 kilogram, between 998 and 1002 grams. Call it W1. Every number that follows is a fraction of this one. If this is wrong, everything downstream is wrong. Keep a 1/3 kilogram sealed as a witness sample, in case the result is disputed. Now count the nuts. Build them into piles of 10, nobody miscounts piles of 10. 19 piles and 3 loose nuts is 193. This is also when foreign matter shows itself. Stones, leaves, dried apple, and occasionally weight that somebody added on purpose. Nut count is nuts per kilogram, so a smaller number means bigger nuts. Below 180 is excellent, around 200 is average, above 230 is poor. And here is a piece of arithmetic worth carrying with you. Outturn is pounds per 80 kilos. Kernel grade is kernels per pound, so the pound cancels. Average grade is roughly 80 times nut count, divided by outturn. 200 nuts per kilo at 48 pounds points at about 330 kernels to the pound, and the finished grade will run finer still. That is our own arithmetic, not an industry rule, and it gives you the average kernel, never the grade mix. Now the slow part. Every nut in the sample is cut lengthwise with shelling scissors. Keep the 2 halves together. Keep each kernel with its own shell. Work in good light, wear gloves and wipe the blades between cuts. Then you sort what you see into 3 colours. Green is wholesome. No spot, no mark, no shrivelling. 100% accepted, and these are the only kernels that count in full. Blue is half. Spotted kernels, bitten by insects before the shell hardened, carrying at least 1 black mark. The clean part is still edible. And premature kernels, shriveled because they were harvested too early. Both count 50%. Red is nothing. Stunted nuts that never filled, mouldy kernels white-marked from bad drying or humid storage, brown kernels oily and yellowed from sitting too long on the ground, moth-eaten kernels with a yellow powder where the insect worked, and empty nuts, all rejected outright. But watch that 50% rule, because it is not universal. West Africa and the African Cashew Alliance count spotted and premature kernels at half. Vinacus, the Vietnamese base standard, counts them at 1/4. Same physical sample, different reported outturn. On the 2 sheets later in this video, the gap is about 3/4 of a pound, $25 to $35 a ton. Weigh in a fixed order, and this is the step people get wrong. Good kernels out of their shells, tester left on, that is W2. The 50% categories weighed whole, kernels and shells together, W3. Then those same kernels taken out of their shells, W4, and the outright rejects whole, W5. Now the defect rate, and here the manual contradicts itself. The printed formula says W3 plus W5 over W1. But the manual's own worked example halves W3 first, and so does every real factory sheet we have looked at. Half rejected means half, The formula should read W3/2 plus W5. Above 24% defective, a lot is rejected. But it is really a ladder. Up to 15% is standard grade, 16 to 24 is accepted but under grade. And that is West African practice. Vietnam's national standard sets defective nuts at 10%, measured a different way, so do not put the two numbers side by side. The Outturn calculation uses only kernel weights. Good kernels plus half the 50% kernels divided by the sample weight. Notice that defect rate and Outturn sit on different bases, whole nuts for one, shelled kernels for the other. They are not two halves of 100%, and they never will be. Then convert to pounds per 80 kilo bag, and the constant matters. The manual's worked example multiplies by 80 over 454, even though its own main formula uses the right number. And a pound is not 454 grams. It is 453.59237 grams, exactly by international agreement. The right factor is 0.17637. It is a small error, but Vietnam already fixed it, and both factory sheets in this video use the exact number. Here is a real result sheet from a Vietnamese factory floor. Lot SGN 00084, 1000 grams, 184 nuts. Outright rejects 180 grams, half rejects 66, that is 21.3% defective. Good kernels 238 grams plus 9.5 from the half class. 24.75%, 43.65 pounds. Every figure reconciles exactly, and the factory used the accurate pound, not the manuals. Now the second sheet. Same lot number, same round of testing, annotated Mau Ut wet sample. Defect climbs to 32.9%. Outturn falls to 37.57 pounds. 6 pounds of outturn gone. The sheets record no moisture reading, so read this honestly. It is sample-to-sample variation, with a very strong hint attached. Two samples from one lot can disagree by more than the gap between a good origin and a poor one. So what is 1 pound of outturn actually worth? 1 pound per 80 kilo bag is 5.67 kilos of kernel in every ton of raw nuts. At this year's W320 prices, that is about $40 per ton. And the market agrees. In December, Tanzania at 48 to 54 pounds traded $190 above Mozambique at 45 to 48. Midpoints 51 and 46.5, 4.5 pounds of outturn $190. $42 a pound. The arithmetic and the market agree inside 4%. So where do the origins sit? These are the African Cashew Alliance's own numbers from its weekly market reports this season. And note the manual's 40 to 50 pound range no longer covers the top of the market. 54 is real. Moisture is the other half of the story. 8 to 10% is the working band, and 10% is the contract ceiling in every standard we checked, not 8. In May this year, the Alliance reported Ghanaian nuts arriving at 14 and 18% after rushed buying and poor drying. That is not a grading problem. That is mold, and it is somebody's entire margin. So how good is this test? A 1 kilogram sample is only about 200 nuts. Depending on how much nut-to-nut variation you assume, the two-sample protocol lands somewhere near plus or minus 1 pound. That is our estimate, not a published figure. But hold it in mind, because 1 pound is the same size as the commercial gap between an average lot and a good one, which is exactly why contracts retest on arrival. There is still no ISO standard for raw cashew nuts. ISO 6477 covers kernels only and was reconfirmed as current in 2024. So this method, 1 bag in 10, mother sample quartering 2 1 kilogram samples, is the de facto world standard, a decade on. Vietnam asks for more, 10% of bags and a 2,000 gram analysis sample. 3 things are genuinely new. The Cashew app built by TechnoServe's Benin team in 2021 photographs the sample, geotags it and calculates outturn for you. European sampling rules for aflatoxin got far heavier in April 2024. And X-ray inspection of in-shell nuts reached the market this month, for pecans, walnuts, pistachios and peanuts. Cashew is not named, but the cut test itself is unchanged. In 2026 it is still a knife, a scale and a trained eye. So the corrections, every one of them dated and sourced on screen. And the things worth keeping. Sampling decides the answer before you cut a single nut. Half rejected means half. Defects are weighed as whole nuts, and outturn as shelled kernels with the tester still on different bases, so they never add to 100. Use the real pound, and 1 pound is worth about $40 a ton. Every figure here was checked against its source and dated on screen. With thanks to GIZ and ComCashew for the manual this is built on. No Cashew, build better.